All right. I got a new setup here. I This isn't a podcast. This is literally just an excuse for me to get my opinion out into the world for the 50 people who are going to see it. But my name's Michael DeFeo. If you don't know, I feel like if you're watching this, you probably do know that because only people who know me actually watch this. But I had a couple of thoughts here that I've been stewing on. You know the SpongeBob meme, the how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? That's kind of how I feel like the world is that meme talking about the Democratic Party and kind of liberals more broadly. Just from some of the things that I've been seeing from my side over the last week or two, I just don't know why we can't have any nuance in our party. It really frustrates me. But the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the debate that's erupted today between the abundance liberals and the left, specifically leftists, democratic socialists, who for some reason have been at war over direction of policy objectives for the last 2 months since abundance came out, mainly because today there was some polling that shows that when compared side by side to voters, abundance policy versus populist policy, populism is more popular with voters. No shit. Do we just wake up? Donald Trump just won the election. Donald Trump ran on populist messaging. Yes, he's a liar and a bad person, but he also has very populist messaging. He is not a normal Republican as we used to know. He is a populist. He just did this. We did this 3 months ago or 5 months ago, whatever it is. How have we forgotten this already? Populist campaigning won him that election. And Abundance, that book is not a suggestion for how to campaign. It is a suggestion for how to govern more effectively so that you actually have something to campaign on, that you've made people's lives better and given them more stuff so that they should reelect you or elect you in the first place. Because the idea is right now, Democrats can't really point to anywhere where that's the case. So let's just take a look, because yesterday it came out that San Francisco's Unified School District is implementing something called the Grading for Equity. Basically, this is like the pinnacle of stupid progressive leftist policy around schooling. In this system, an 80% in a class gets you an A. That's barely a B. That's a B by 1 point most places. And where I went to school, that was a C. And it's going to be an A. Also, a grade as low as a 41% gets you a C. That is not just an F, that is a aggressive F. That's an F by 20 points. I mean, that is like there the concept of a failure, there should be levels to that as well. Because there's levels to success, there should be levels to failure. And a 40 is not just failure. 40 is like you didn't even show up or try. Like you need to redo that grade. You need to retake that test. You need to read that book type of failure. So that is what we're doing in San Francisco on the left. And they are trying to claim that they somehow have the high ground in suggesting policy ideas. But we've just spent weeks going over why Democrats overpoll everything and over focus group everything, and how we shouldn't calibrate our entire political communication strategy off of polls, and how we should not pick candidates based off of polls. We shouldn't, pick ideas based off of polling, that it is not the best use of our time, and it just makes us have this over corporate structure to our party. We're too stupid and tribal to even see that as soon as there's a poll that comes out, whether it's leftists seeing this poll that confirms their priors, that abundance is not popular and that their strategy for governing is actually the best, they're going to all of a sudden say, oh, look at this poll. It really, it shows, it proves it's a scientific proof that I'm right. And moderate liberals like resist libs did the same thing. They did the same thing when polls would come out showing Biden beating Trump by 10 points, or when we were worried about Biden being old, they would talk about how the polls were so close, like it was still within 5 points. That's a margin of error. Like, so we rely on this shit too much when it confirms what we want it to confirm for us. Confirmation bias happens to everyone, happens to Democrats a lot. So can we stop talking about polling? We should change the conversation to what we want people to be talking about and the priorities we want people to have, the priorities that we can actually govern on. Trump does this all the time. Like, he was not elected off of some really strong electoral sentiment that we should annex Canada and we should deport people to El Salvador. They wanted deportations. They didn't want that. That we should take over Greenland. Like, that we should tariff the EU. Like, what are we talking about? That was not part of the electoral sentiment. But now Republicans support that because Trump made it so. Trump made it that way. Not the other way around. Trump did it. He's not responding to the voters. The voters are responding to him because the elites in the party respond to him too. He's done this over and over on so many issues, and it's kind of ridiculous that we just completely ignore that. We can do the same thing. We did it with the situation in El Salvador with CCOT. We started yelling and screaming about it. We started making the media pay attention to us. We changed the narrative that it wasn't just an immigration issue about Trump making good on his promise to deport X number of people, that he wasn't deporting just violent criminals because we didn't know if they were violent criminals because they had no due process. So we changed it from an immigration conversation, which Democrats are bad on. We know that from polling, but also from the actual election. We changed it from immigration to due process, fundamental rights, constitution, things that are a little bit more, that Democrats have a little more of a leg to stand on. We can do this with multiple issues, and we should. I don't know why we're not, and I don't know why we have to use an old Obama term, have this circular firing squad where every time we disagree on something, we want to kill each other because, someone doesn't have the best interest of the party in mind, or someone is not pure enough. Like, we need to stop with the moralizing. We need to stop relying on polls and what they tell us and confirming about our own biases. We need to go out there and say what we believe and say it with our chest. And if we believe it strong enough, we should go out and change the narrative. That's a fact. The second thing I want to talk about very quickly before I lose my shit is the idea that Democratic consultants and donors are going to build a Joe Rogan of the left, or any kind of similar media ecosystem with podcasts and YouTubers and radio that looks anything like what the right enjoyed in 2024. Because the fact of the matter is, Joe Rogan, Theo Von, Dave Portnoy, people like that are not political figures. Joe Rogan is not even the Joe Rogan of the right. He was just a Democrat like 2 elections ago. He was a Bernie bro. He's liberal on some issues. He's conservative on others, but that's not his main shtick. Most of these guys are just kind of like Andrew Schultz is the same way. They're not political figures inherently. They bring people onto their podcasts who they think are interesting, who they just want to talk to for several hours throughout, 3-hour episodes. Like, these are not political people. They're just talking to guys and ladies. And sometimes politics comes up because they talk to people who talk about specific issues, or they even bring political candidates onto their shows. But it's like culture and it's sports and it's whatever. And young men, by and large, listen to them and trust them. Like, your average viewer of nighttime cable news is like 70 something. Your average podcast listener is 34, much closer to my age than my parents, right? And so the fact is that there's a younger audience there. And at the end, close to the election, these guys, they did bring Trump onto their podcast because Trump wanted to go on their podcast and talk to them at a time before Kamala Harris was the nominee, when Biden obviously couldn't go on podcast. Biden, could you imagine him going on a 3-hour podcast with one of these guys? I mean, it would be ridiculous. He would be kicked out the next day. So Trump would go on these podcasts. He'd bro it up with these guys. He would seem like a normal dude talking about doing cocaine on Theo Von's podcast, like just regular broy dude stuff, talking about whatever. Now, add in the fact that these guys already don't like being scolded by liberals and Democrats for how they speak or, their views. I don't love it, but like their views on race, on women, on telling jokes, on whatever, like they feel like liberals overly scold them. And this guy's coming on their podcast who's running for president and he's just being a guy and they feel like they can talk to him. And then afterwards, like, okay, yeah, like I like this guy now. So I'm just going to tell my massive audience that I support him and I'm going to vote for him. That's kind of the crux of their political involvement is like who they're going to vote for in the presidential election. There's a lot of people vote in presidential elections. It's not that political of them to do. So the point is we cannot, through democratically backed millions of dollars and through democratic political consultants, we cannot build that kind of media ecosystem because it's so organic what they have. We cannot just like will it into existence because it's going to come across as fake and inauthentic and people are going to notice and they're not going to listen to us because we sound ridiculous, honestly, when we go and try to just like make ourselves sound like them on podcasts. Because if we're not like them, we shouldn't pretend. Just be yourself. Again, the political consulting class is not going to solve this problem. And trust me, I'm in that class of people. That's like my day job. And we're not going to be the ones that are going to solve this through like some sort of grand strategy requiring millions of dollars of seed money. So please, for the life of God, just fucking stop talking about it like that. We have our own advantages over the right. They have their advantages over us. We need to absolutely work on how we are reaching every voter, especially young men. We need to work on how we're speaking to young men. We need to work on the types of people we're putting on these podcasts. We need to identify people who can go toe to toe with the right-wing politicians or the Tucker Carlsons that go onto these podcasts. Absolutely. But the idea that we're just going to manufacture it like it's a startup is so painful to read about and is so classic us. Like, it is ridiculous. And I just don't want us to go down this path of funneling millions of dollars into something that is obviously a dead end and is not going to work and actually could backfire and make us seem even more robotic and inauthentic and ridiculous. So for the love of God, please don't do this.